The day for Ethics Awareness Week. My name is Brian Birch. I'm the director of the Center for the Study of Ethics here, and want to say how pleased we are to have you show up late in the afternoon. We hope that it does apply to you as students, very much so, and we're looking forward to your input and questions and comments. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone associated with Ethics Awareness Week. We've had 10 events so far. We have 3 more coming up tomorrow. We're looking forward to ending the session well. Most of our sessions have been live streamed and recorded, so if you're interested in looking at what we've done today or during the other sessions, you can go to the UVU Ethics Center. If you Google that, you can find the schedule with the links to our video. So the title for today's session is AI in Higher Education, and the purpose of this session is to allow us to think about some of the ethical issues connected to AI here at UVU. So we've all been exposed to questions about AI in a variety of contexts, but as you'll hear from our panelists today, there are a lot of intriguing and pressing ethical issues regarding what we do here at UVU and how it relates to teaching and learning here. And so we think it's very applicable. We have representatives from different parts of campus to help address those questions and hopefully answer some of them. So I'll introduce the panelists in order, and then we'll turn the time over to David Connolly to lead off. But to your far left is David Connolly. He's the Associate Provost for Student Success here at UVU. His areas of specialty include public administration, information technology and government, and community development. And importantly for this session here today, David is the chair of the AI task force here on campus. So there is a task force designed to address these very kinds of issues, and we appreciate him taking the time out of his busy administrative schedule to be here. To David's left is Matt North. Matt is the chair of the Department of Information Systems and Technology here at UVU. He's also a professor in that department, and his areas of specialty include database design, development and administration, data analytics, and cyber law. And something I think you'll hear about during the panel today, he is spearheading the creation of a new program here at UVU on applied AI. So that's something I'm looking forward to hearing more about. And then to his left and to my immediate right is Krista Albrecht Crane. She is a professor of English here at UVU, and she is the co-chair of the Writing Program Committee. Is that correct?
Chair.
The chair. You're no longer co-chair. Chair of the Writing Committee. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of issues related to AI in her department and in programs related there. Krista's areas include critical and cultural theory, cultural studies, and writing studies, to name a few. So with that brief introduction in mind, I'll turn it over to David. He'll open up and discuss what's happening with the AI task force and maybe provoke us into further discussion. So David.
Provoke. So the AI task force did what all good task force do. It became an institute. In other words, it made itself permanent. So about this time last year, as all of you are kind of aware, right, the world discovered AI. It had been around for a few decades before that in various iterations, and there were plenty of really good movies that taught us about it. But anyways, as that kind of all blew up and everybody started paying attention to it, the president gave us a very specific charge, because there's lots of ways to kind of tackle AI, but her specific charge to us was, I want to know what this looks like for students. In other words, what does this mean for students, the curriculum, those kinds of things, and then what does it mean for the faculty who end up having to deliver that and do those kinds of things. So we set aside kind of all the other things that are out there, not that what I just described doesn't have plenty in it, but there were plenty of other people clamoring to talk about it in terms of how it could change the functions on campus and any number of things. We could automate our sprinkler systems with it or something like that. And so, joke, by the way. But anyways, so we focused in on that and did that. So I just wanted to share two things that I think came out of it from the student lens. There was UVUSA representatives there, and we had some open forums with students and other things. And two big things kind of came out that really exemplified the student voice in all of this and the student concerns, at least at that time, and have kind of pressed forward to this point. The first one was there was a pretty heavy clamor to the idea of, well, I have to go get a job at some point here in the near future, or whatever that might mean to you. In other words, I have to leave the confines of UVU and things, and what does this mean to me? Is this going to change the way I look for a job? Is UVU going to prepare me in these kinds of ways? And hopefully you can appreciate the fact that kind of bumps up against the more traditional roles of the education and wanting to make sure that we're teaching you the right things and all of those things. We can't just adopt something right off the cuff and away we go and assume everything will be great. And I'm sure my colleagues will talk about some of the concerns that we would have in those kinds of ways. But students were really kind of concerned about, well, how is this going to change? And what's it going to mean to me 2 or 3 years from now when I go out to get a job? The second one, and was probably the more vocal of all of this, was I'm getting these strong conflicting messages. In one of my classes, I will go into it, and I'm strongly encouraged to use AI and explore it, and the faculty member seems to be using AI or investigating it or whatever, and I walk into another class, and I'm told that if I think the words AI, I've now failed the class. They put a chip in my head, and they're monitoring. That's a joke. But they're and so it's this end of a spectrum, if you will, that the students felt they were on, and they were getting pulled back and forth on that. The response from the institution at that time was to say, well, we would like all the faculty to put a statement, at least in their syllabus, about AI use. So that at least the student would, get the syllabus, be able to look at that and say, okay, I think I kind of know how this faculty member is approaching that. But that still didn't quite mitigate the concerns that students had, that it's just, a little bit too much tug and pull going on in their life in terms of how this is. We're still at that phase, obviously, in terms of that discussion. I assume you're probably still having similar experiences with that. But those were the two big things that came out of the task force, at least on the student side of things. And I would assume that gives plenty of fodder to my two colleagues here, and so I'll just turn the time over to them.
I'm under no delusions that most of you are probably here because you have to be or were told to be. And so I was trying to think about what I could say that would make you glad you came by the time you leave. And I really mean that sincerely. What could I say that would make you glad that by the time you leave, even though you maybe felt like you had to come, you were glad you came? So as I was thinking about that, I wanted to start with a couple of prompting questions. And I'm not going to call for, contributions right now. I hope we'll have lots of time for question and answer. But I want you to think about these questions, and if you want to write them down, these are intended to be thought-provoking questions. First, what defines artificial intelligence? What is the definition of artificial intelligence? If you're not sure, break it apart. What is artificial? What makes something artificial? What makes something intelligent? How do we define intelligence? When we put them together, what's the difference between artificial intelligence and real intelligence? Why does humankind invent technologies that create problems? Why do we create technologies that make a mess of certain things? Like getting charged with plagiarism on a term paper when all you were trying to do was improve what you were trying to write. Why do we create technologies that introduce such opportunities? And when we realize the unintended consequences of those technologies, why don't we get rid of them? Why don't we make them go away? What is unique amongst technologies between something like artificial intelligence and something like, say, the motorcycle that I rode to campus today. Those are both technologies. Those are both inventions made by humankind. But there's something specifically unique about artificial intelligence when compared to a technology like a motorcycle, or even a technology like a television. What is it that makes AI, or the personal computer, or the internet, a unique human invention of technology that is different from so many of the other technologies that we've invented over the course of human existence? These are the kinds of questions that we really ought to be asking ourselves when we approach the discipline, the academic discipline of artificial intelligence. Now, Dr. Birch mentioned that in my department, we are in the process right now of proposing a new bachelor's degree. And my sole purpose in being here today is to recruit you all to major in applied AI. We keep making these jokes and nobody gets them. No, in fact, do you know who the first person I called after the meeting when we decided the right thing to do to invent or create a bachelor's degree in applied artificial intelligence was? Who do you think I called? You can participate now.
Probably David.
I called the chair of the philosophy department, Pierre Lamarche. Why would a computer expert, I spent 10 years as a software engineer before I became a professor. And I built some of the first machine learning models that eBay used when eBay was a startup company. Now, why would someone with that level of technological expertise call the chair of the philosophy department first?
Because you're smart.
Because I'm smart. No, because of the questions that I just posed to you. Because of the ethics and the implications of inventing technologies that fundamentally change what it means to be human and how we be human. And that is the crux, that is the core of applied AI. Now AI, our colleagues up there on the hill, you can see a new building going up over there on the hill. It's just steel frame right now. That's the new engineering building. And our colleagues in computer science and electrical and computer engineering are busy building the technologies that fuel AI. But that's not what this new degree program is all about. It's about the questions that I just asked you. It's about how do we create AI that helps humanity, that can be used responsibly to enhance the condition of living in this world and enhance the very world that we live in. And taking those technologies that our very smart colleagues in computer science and engineering are creating and putting them to work in service of humanity. That's what the new degree is all about. And to me, that starts with doing it ethically. But ethics is a very dubious, or a very amorphous is the right word, not dubious. Ethics is a very amorphous topic to discuss. And there's a lot of different opinions and values that go into defining what is ethical use of AI. So that's why I'm here today. Because I want you as college students to start thinking about that now, because you're going to graduate into a world that's going to expect you to be able to do that. You know what my undergraduate major was? History. Why have I been able to be adaptable and successful as a professional, as a software engineer, as a professor of technology? Because as an undergraduate student, I made intentional choices about what I was going to learn and how I was going to learn it. I didn't have access to ChatGPT, but I didn't just put the prompt into ChatGPT for my term paper and then turn in whatever it gave me back. I didn't have that option. You do. The world is different now. But I didn't choose to do that even if I had access to that technology, because I recognized that as an undergraduate student, as a college student, what I needed to do was learn how to think about what I did and be intentional. And if that's what you choose to do as a UVU student, how you use AI, other than the obvious bad examples one of which I just gave, how you choose to use AI will inform your undergraduate experience to the extent that you will develop yourself as a professional so that whatever the world turns into in the next 20 or 30 years, and believe me, I graduated a long time ago, whatever the world turns into in the next 20 or 30 years, you'll be prepared to succeed in that world. And that's what we're trying to develop at UVU, not just in the Bachelor's of Applied AI, but in all of the degree programs. When someone comes to me and says, Dr. North, should I major in philosophy? Should I major in psychology? Should I major in theater? I tell them, absolutely you should, if that's what you're passionate about. But be intentional and make the choices that you're making in college intentionally, so that you're developing yourself into a person that you can be proud of and a person that can adapt into a world that we're still inventing right now. So that's why I'm here.
Fantastic. Yeah, so hi, everybody. Thank you so much to Brian Birch for inviting me to be here today. So yeah, Brian mentioned the writing program, and you know the writing program is organizes all the English 1010 and 2010 courses that some of you are taking right now, I suspect, correct? Are some of you in 1010 or 2010? Yeah, so we have so many sections of that class at UVU that all of the full-time faculty in the English department teach sections of 1010 and 2010, and we have about 60 full-time faculty. But then we have over 60 adjunct instructors, part-time faculty who teach the sections of 1010 and 2010. And I work with the part-time instructors. And I say that as a preface to the points I want to make in a second, because you can imagine how important the discussion about AI has been for us in my department, teaching writing. Because if anything, like you were just saying, if anything, these generative AI programs do exactly that. They write, right? So I want to say a couple of things. One is, I teach a section of English 2010 right now. In fact, I taught it right before coming here. And I just want to tell you what happened the last 10 minutes of class today, because it's directly related. So my students right now, if you're in 2010 at the moment, you're all working on annotated bibliographies, right? Okay, so I'm working with my students on their annotated bibliography. That's that list of outside sources they find, locate, read, and then they write them up. They write a paragraph about each source. So today was the last class period before that assignment is due for my students. So we talked about MLA citations and how to look them up in our textbook. I have the textbook here because I want to mention something a little bit later. So we looked at the chapter in the textbook, and then one student raises her hand and says, what do you think about the citation generators you can find online? Would you recommend we use them or not? Then I said, well, sure, you can use them as a starting point, but make sure you check what it actually generates, because mistakes can creep in. And then I said, I didn't grow up with generators like you were saying. We didn't have ChatGPT when we were students. And I said, so I don't use them. I just sit down and I start typing the citation. It's actually, and then I said, it's actually faster for me to just do that than to have a program generated for me, then double check everything. That actually takes me longer. Then another student says, oh, I recommend this generator called Citation Machine. So I had my computer there, I typed it in, Citation Machine opens up on the, on the screen. And actually what we see when you go to Citation Machine, there's a white box in the middle of the landing page, right? The interface you have with a program that you're engaging with. And it was a little box that said at the top, check your paper for plagiarism and grammar mistakes. And then the white space where you're supposed to insert your paper. And I see that and I'm like, whoa, that's an AI program is doing that, is working, is doing this. You see what I mean? It didn't say that an AI program was at work on that page. All it said was a simple white box with an invitation for you to enter your paper and have it work on it. Now, having a lot of experience myself with a lot of these programs, I tried a lot of them. I do it on a regular basis now because I need to learn what this new world is all about. A lot of these programs don't just check for your grammar, they also rewrite your paper. So there's that. So in any case, I want to start with this because one element I want to add to what's been said is that this is a kind of an explanation, I think, of the struggles we are experiencing in education, but also a fear. So as an explanation, what I wanted to say is that it's become clear to me that the way AI has been rolled out by these big tech companies in this country follows a particular business model that we've been building in this country for many, many, many years. So here comes AI, it's presented to us as consumers in a certain way. And that presentation is largely, like, we don't talk about it, we don't analyze it, we're not even aware of it. Like, that's that white box we saw on that webpage when we went there today, my students and I, right? It's just there, it's already on the website, in a lot of cases now on all your computers, yes, but also cell phones, it's embedded in the operating system. Right, the new Pixel phone that came out a couple of weeks ago, its big marketing line was, it's got Google's new AI system on it. Yeah? The new Apple phone that just came out, Apple 16, I mean, explain this one to me. They're rolling out a new piece of hardware where its sole purpose is to run Apple's new AI system, but it's not out yet. So they're selling a $1,000 machine without the AI on it yet, but the promise is there that their AI technology is coming. So what I'm trying to say, this is very significant, I'm trying to say that as part of this discussion of what does AI in education mean, it has really, there are two different purposes and goals at play in education versus in the business world, where AI, out of which AI comes, okay? So in the business world, yes, it is about marketing, about profits, about selling us a product, about in fact, presenting a product in a way that we don't even notice it's being sold to us. It's just there. You know what I mean? But then education has a very different goal. At least traditional education has been about working with you, right? Working with our students on a process of learning how to read something, learning how to write different kinds of essays, making mistakes, drafting something, getting feedback from your professor, redrafting, revising, turning it back in again, okay? It's actually a very slow process. It takes years to become a good reader and writer. It's not a mistake that when you get a PhD, you're in graduate school for, I mean, I was in grad school for 6 years and I did it, I was able to do it really quickly, but a lot of the people I know, it took them 8, 9, 10 years to complete graduate school because we learned how to write, think, the process, you know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna stop now, but what I wanted to introduce here into our conversation is that I think we meaning in education, because this panel is called AI in Education, and you as students are exactly in the middle of this real clash, or a crashing together of two different worldviews. One is the business world's worldview, and it's how it rolled out AI in a way that we could, as consumers, we had no control, essentially. There's no regulation in the United States about AI programs. It just happened 2 years ago, right, when when OpenAI first made its large language model available for general use. And then on the other hand, we have education with its very different process. And I know from talking to our adjunct instructors, to students, many students that I interact with, it's wild out there what you experience in your courses. This is what David said a little bit, like different professors having different expectations, different professors knowing more or less about AI, your own experiences with it. So, I mean, yeah, that's what I wanted to say at the beginning, that I think we have a problem on our hands here that is serious. It's serious. It implicates everything we do in education. Is really, AI messes that up in fundamental ways. And I for one struggle with what it all means, and I'm not optimistic that in the long run we, meaning educators and you students, that we're going to come out of it saving learning, like saving a place for real learning, for deep learning, for slow reading, slow writing, all of that. I think it's okay, but that's what I wanted to, hopefully this makes sense as a kind of a starting framework here.
Thank you. Okay, there's a lot of questions on the table, so we're interested to hear from you.
If nobody has any questions, I can talk for the rest of the time.
No, I'll bet we're generous, so.
Look at all the hands that went
Look,
up.
I have it up immediately.
We don't want to hear that guy.
Nothing personal.
So my question is, with learning, we're talking about how AI can make it so that we don't learn as well, we don't apply ourselves. Throughout history, we have forgotten how to do things. In the past, most people knew how to do random things around the house, knew how to build a house. A lot of people knew how to build a house because they had to do it on their own. So my question is AI making it so that these things that we say are fundamental, that are necessary, is it making it so that those things are becoming less important, that we may be able to learn something else even more? Because then when building houses, like for example, when everybody built their own house, they didn't know how to read or write as much. And then they learned how to then we started learning how to read and write, and then people started building houses and we would pay them to do it. And so is AI gonna make it so that it becomes more compartmentalized or so? I think that might be the word that I'm looking for.
Yes. I think it goes back to one of the probing questions that I asked at the beginning about intentionality and about why do we create technology? What's our intention when we create a technology to do something? Why did we stop building houses for ourselves with rudimentary tools and rudimentary knowledge? Was it because we were lazy? Was it because there were other people we could see who built a house and said, you did a lot better than me, can I give you something, right? In exchange for you doing the quality job on my house that you did on yours, because I can't do it that well. Is that the incentive? There are all kinds of incentives for us to pursue technologies. And so the pursuit of AI as a technology generally is primarily driven by a desire to accomplish something faster, cheaper, better than we could previously with the existing technologies that we had at our disposal. And so in every instance where we look to AI as a solution for the question, can I do this faster? Can I do this cheaper? Can I do this better? Is what's the intention? And there are plenty of examples throughout history where you could say somebody did that with technology without thinking about the intention, and the consequences were bad, potentially disastrous. I watched the movie Oppenheimer last summer, and I think that they did a great job. Christopher Nolan did a great job in portraying the internal anguish of Robert Oppenheimer when he came to the realization of what he'd done, right? And to me as a technologist, that was deeply thought-provoking. I think a lot of people go to the movies and they want to be entertained and they leave, but as a technologist, it was deeply thought-provoking as a metaphor for all technologies that we create in answer to a question of how can I do this work in a way that is better, in my view, than the work that we're doing now. And in some cases, we can't do it without the technology, right? And so I think that's part of the reason why I emphasized so heavily the importance of being intentional in the things that you do, because every technology that you adopt and every application of that technology will have some outcomes or consequences, some of which was exactly what you intended. I'm too lazy to write my term paper. I copied and pasted the instructor's prompt into ChatGPT and then I turned it in. I got the paper, I got the grade, whatever, right? You got what you intended, but what are the other consequences? Maybe you didn't learn to write as well as you could have. Maybe you didn't even learn to write as well as you wanted to, because you cheated yourself out of that opportunity by making that choice with technology. Is that a reasonable response to your question?
I'd push it this way. To me, you're talking about specialization is in the world that I'm kind of familiar with. And specialization generally, I mean, if you kind of look at the organizational side of it, is we attribute that to most of what we've been able to achieve, because as individuals have been able to specialize, you kind of made that point, right? And as we specialize, we're able to achieve more and those kind of things. The question nobody's ever been able to kind of figure out, or at least continues to be pondered, is, well, eventually you get to the point where you're too specialized, so we get over-specialized, or technology moves past the specialization that we have and we're incapable then of adapting past that. And that's really kind of the question. And I think the conversation that's been had a lot over the last several decades is the rate at which specialization is being made null and void essentially in people's lives seems to be increasing. So you become really, really, really good at something. 3-4 years from now, though, technology has wiped you out. You better be adaptable. And I think that's the question: is can you learn the skills that are adaptable? And I think that's what Krista was talking about. Is that what are those base skills of adaptability? And we like to talk about critical thinking and those kinds of things. But if you become overly specialized, I'm pretty comfortable telling you something's going to wipe you out pretty quickly, because things are moving a lot faster than they were.
Two things I can add on to this, I think. One is a practical observation I've made. It's not an observation, it's actually true. The better of a writer you are, the more effectively will you be able to use generative AI programs. Okay, so if the hope is, I can just, my paper can be partially written with AI, that's great. Yeah, sure, it does those kinds of things, but in terms of producing really good writing that actually addresses a particular writing task's full, like we call it rhetorical situation, that you do a good job with whatever you're writing. If you want to use an AI to help you, it can help you only as much as you already are a good writer or not, because in the end, the human has to read the output and evaluate it and use it or not. You know what I mean? So if we're not good readers and writers, then the machine is not going, it's going to actually be detrimental to what we're producing in the end. So I think one thing I want to say when we use that argument you made, Matt, that in today's world, all of you probably are hearing so many messages about you need to be proficient at using AI. If you're not, then someone else will get the job, that sort of thing. I always want to add that, yes, but only if you are a good thinker on your own terms already. AI cannot do that for you. And just to throw in really quickly, like one thing that's super important, and we don't talk about that, we don't talk about it at UVU, we don't have lectures about this, is how does a large language model actually work? And how come it produces hallucinations? And once we understand kind of the mechanism of how these machines actually work, it becomes much clearer why we should not rely on them for any, right? I'm talking about writing, that's my background, writing English. We should never rely on them for any sort of like accurate writing. We have to double check it. We always need to bring in our own knowledge about reading and writing. So in that sense, I'm answering your question. I want to say, I don't think reading and writing and critical thinking and cognitive abilities are something that we should ever give to the machine the way like your example was building a house. I think those are different categories here. Skills of building something versus the actual cognitive skills in your brain. That's something I hope as a society, certainly as educators, we should never be ready to let a machine do for us. So, that's the first thing I wanted to, well, I guess that's it. I'll leave it at that. For now.
There were several other hands.
There were several other hands, I know, yeah.
Okay, because it is so important to bring the humanistic touch to our work, what ways, if there really are any, do you believe that students can use AI to help as a tool instead of a hindrance, and that will not bring about true growth?
I'll talk about this really quickly. Interestingly, like I've spent a lot of time using different programs, reading about them, reading research, what other scholars are saying, for 2 years, ever since ChatGPT was released. And I can tell you, as the writer that I am, for the writing I do professionally and all of that, I tend to not feel compelled to use any AI most of the time, because of what I said a second ago, because for me to feel confident that what I'm producing with the AI is actually really good, I end up spending so much time checking everything and making sure it's exactly what I want to say, that in the end it's for me easier to just write it myself. And I think what I miss when I do try to use, when I do use an AI program to draft something or for ideas or for brainstorming, what I feel is missing, and when I see what it generates and I read through it and I try to decide is this good or not, it's too fast. Like it doesn't allow me to sit there in the effort, to sit there and be like, oh shoot, I don't know what to say. I know there are some arguments here. I know people have written about this. What are they? Yes, I can go to an AI, I can generate 10 arguments pro and con or whatever. But to me, that's too fast. It's like that slowness is missing. So this might sound a little bit crazy. I think it's time for us to revalue places like Wikipedia. That where you look up something, you read, you read something that other people have put together, but you have sources at the end of that article that help you read a little bit farther. So that if something doesn't make sense in the main text, it gives you a source. You go to that source, you can read that. And so my point then is that I think AI can definitely help in writing tasks. Sure, it can help with brainstorming topics or even outlining a paper or giving you suggestions for how do I write an interesting introduction on topic X. It can give you some ideas, but in the end, it's just for me, it's a question of engaging our own minds to go through that difficult effort, where you just learn how to think, how to write, how to read. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but.
Well, I want to thank you for the first coherent defense of Wikipedia that I've heard. Not sure I was going to.
From an English professor.
I mean, seriously, for us to even say
No,
something like that, this is how AI has changed the landscape. And also I was just on Wikipedia this morning looking something up. And you know that right now they have a message about donating to the foundation, and that's actually a fundamental point because Wikipedia is a non-profit foundation. It's an organization that doesn't work for profit, which is absolutely and fundamentally different from how the large language models, AI programs have been rolled out to the population of the United States. Those are huge tech companies that make money off of their services, and that's also, I think, in terms of the type of tool we have available. Here's one that is, that has an incentive of just generating, creating content. This is Wikipedia, but not for profit. People are not paid. Wikipedia editors are not paid for their work. And on the other hand, we have these AI companies that, by the way, this is a response also to the first question. If you think about it, every single generated text you get from one of the AI machines, it's capable of doing that because it has learned from human writing. And it has learned from human writing in a process that did not ask for consent from the human writers whose work has been vacuumed up, and also has not paid any sort of money or anything like that to the human writers whose work is being used. And this is especially acute for artists, visual artists, but also writers, fiction writers and so on, whose work has been entirely, that's part of the training data of the AI program. So that to me is also a huge ethical issue that one should foreground. In fact, when we talk about AI, not mention in passing or in a footnote. I think it should be at the forefront of our discussions about AI, is how does it give us that writing that you mentioned, right? It's human writing that we don't realize anymore because it feels so cool, so fast, so seamless. Okay, sorry, I'm talking too much.
No, that's my response would be, and I'm going to say this with a little bit of reluctance, but I would like to believe that what AI as it currently is constituted, so I'm not thinking about it in terms of future possibilities, but that maybe it helps us to do certain mundane tasks that we know we can trust it on, and we can get those out of our life, if that makes sense. It can check that the zero is in all the right places, or whatever metaphorically you want to say, which I would hope then would free us up to think bigger thoughts, or to move into spaces that we just haven't had the time to do. I'm reluctant. I don't know that that's exactly how it's going to end up helping us, but I think that gets to that question. I would hope it can help us to take certain things off the table that we just don't have to worry about anymore or waste time on, and move into some other spaces.
So Matt, what about the computer science information technology arena?
Well, I appreciate your question because I think it's a thoughtful one in terms of responsible use of it as a student. And the thing that I immediately thought was the old adage, tell me and I may remember, show me and I may learn, involve me and I may understand. So think about that. Remember, learn, understand. Last spring I gave my final exam to ChatGPT. What would you guess the grade it got on this? It didn't take the class, didn't have any of my course materials, didn't have any input. It just, the only input was the final exam. What do you think it got? And remember, I'm a computer professor, it was code. It had to write code. It got a B+. With no prompting whatsoever as far as the context, it just had the text of the questions, it got a B+. Now, as an educator, what did that make me think? I may not have a job very much longer if ChatGPT can figure out the answers to the questions and just tell people. The reason I did that was because I had some students who just copied the test questions and pasted them into ChatGPT and turned in whatever it gave them. Now, do you think they're going to remember the code that was the solution to those questions? Do you think they learned anything? And do you think that if I gave them that code after having taken my class, that they could understand that code well enough to explain what it did? Probably not. In most cases, probably not. So the question is, as a student, if I use the tool in that way, am I getting what I want out of my college education? It's a choice that students are going to have to make. How will I use these? Because you could probably get away with it. You could turn in a paper, some code, and maybe the professor doesn't realize it was produced by generative AI, and you get a grade and you get out of here with your degree. Apparently, if you're in my classes, you can get out of here with a B+ average, right? Just by pasting the tests in. But it's going to be a choice for the students. And it's going to be a choice for the teachers as well. I've got to change the way I'm teaching because I can't just keep giving that test because I may prompt a lot of people to not learn very much in my class, right? So my answer to your question is students will continually make these choices as to how they want any kind of a generative AI to be an active participant in their college experience and what they want to get out of it. That's what I think.
So related to that is a question for you, because we're facing plenty of ethical dilemmas in terms of how we teach. So my question, and this is a sincere one, is how do you believe I should adapt my teaching? Right? And I teach philosophy, so I teach ethics and values and related courses in religious studies. I've been asking myself the question, how should I adapt in the face of this AI tsunami, and what will be most beneficial to the students? I'm genuinely interested in what you have to say.
Sorry, my question is actually not related to that, but I'm coming at this from the perspective of someone who sees AI as a tool, a way to build somebody up into more effectively, like being able to express their ideas and to have this internal dialogue. Using AI is an extremely useful tool for a term that I call rubber ducking, where you just have your ideas as you have them, and you feel uncertain. You describe the experience of, oh, I don't really know how I want to say this. And assuming the humanistic approach, assuming we want our work as students to be authentic and coming from us, would there be any difference in question of using AI as this sort of rubber duck, this figurative rubber duck for us to speak to and allow us to regurgitate our thoughts and truly like get more familiarized with them? Is it, what about the difference between using AI is less authentic than, say, using like another person, like speaking to another person, and then even someone who has no idea what the topic is about? How is it different, and what about it makes it less authentic?
I would say what makes it different is that when you, and see, this is part of how AI again was presented to us, or how we are invited to use it. As non-tech people, you know, we're not like Matts, we're not people, like the general public doesn't have a computer science background. So we use, like when we open up an AI program, it's the chat bot, right? It's the chat functionality that works with a natural language. So you just you put a text and it gives you something back. Its whole purpose is to make you think that, but the but is coming now. The but is when you work with a human tutor, your teacher, or someone at the writing center, or a friend, or someone like that. In addition to you getting that sense, oh, here's someone who's helping me with actually words and language, you do have the human someone who has intentions, emotions, what you're saying a little bit, Matt, too, like a purpose. There's a back and forth. So to sum all of this up, I think on the face of it, what I would say is yes, in terms of a user's experience with a chatbot, it might be very, very similar to, or it might engender that sense of trust and like it's really helping me become a better writer. Sure. And if you can, and that's also responding to the other question before, yeah, you can definitely use it to help you in all kinds of ways. I use it, for example, with proofreading quite a bit. Because I never learned to type very well, so I'm still making stupid typos, and it catches those kinds of things. But what I'm trying to point out is that there's a whole level of anthropomorphism going on here, right? Where we imbue the machine with intentions, purposes, decisions that it never makes. You know, it works off of numbers and probabilities. So to me, the problem is that I'm using something that is on purpose designed to make me feel or trust it. Do you know what I mean? So it's more of maybe a philosophical question, but to me it also connects to all the other ethical, economic, social things where I feel that as a consumer I do not have full consent over what actually I'm using when I use these AI tools, if that makes sense. Matt, can you comment on that?
So I think your question kind of gets to some of the things that I was shooting for with my probing questions about what's real.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's one firm answer to that question. I mean, ChatGPT is real. It's a real tool, right? And it has real rules that it follows to generate what it puts out. And it has a real procedure for being able to generate content. The same thing goes for a self-driving car. I've got in my pocket right here, I was just fiddling around in my pocket while she was talking, and I have a little coin right here. You were talking about what's the difference between me talking to another human being versus a machine. They gave this to us this morning at the Silicon Slopes AI Summit that was over in the Young Living building. It has nothing to do with AI. It says promise to live on it. And what it is it's a campaign to prevent suicide, which is not necessarily anything to do with AI. But there was a woman there at the meeting who has started a nonprofit organization called Promise to Live because she had an experience in her family that involved suicide. And one of the things that people have been trying to do with interactional AIs like you asked about for a long time, at least 20 years, is psychological counseling. And I cannot for the life of me figure out why somebody thinks that's a good application of AI. Even with the leaps forward we've taken in the last 24 months, it's still terrible at psychological counseling, especially for things like suicide prevention. If you've ever tried any of the chatbots, you know that they fall far short. But why do we keep trying? Because there's therapists who fall far short too. If it was perfect, nobody would be looking to technology for the solution. If every therapist we went to helped us out, think about it as a metaphor of driving a car. Why do we keep trying to come up with self-driving cars? Why is the standard for self-driving cars, 0 accidents. I saw 2 people this morning who didn't get to work without an accident. The standard shouldn't have to be 100% perfect for technology to be adoptable. But we do have to make a choice about which parts of our lives we're going to invent technology into, and which parts it's effective for us. I fired 2 therapists in my life because they weren't working for me, but I'm still not using ChatGPT as my therapist.
So in the spirit of transparency, English lit undergrad, Luddite, and
If you don't know what a Luddite is,
critical
look it up.
theorist.
Ask ChatGPT what a Luddite is.
Critical theorist. A lot of these students are studying in their ethics course white supremacy, issues of poverty. We already have wage gaps, we already have healthcare gaps, we already have a technology gap. How will AI, as it proceeds, enhance those gaps or make them larger, or shrink those gaps based upon socioeconomic, ethnicity issues, and the like? Or is it just a break-even proposition?
I have to answer this one. I exposed myself as a cinephile already by referencing the movie Oppenheimer, but if you haven't seen the Will Smith movie I, Robot, 2004, find it. It's on TBS like every day. Find it and watch it. It is a metaphor for the question that you just asked. It is a thought-provoking examination of the intersection of humans and technology, and the answer, the short answer to your question is, how does technology affect that gap, whether shrinking it or increasing it, goes right back to what I've been talking about pretty much this whole hour, which is intentionality. If we abdicate our responsibility as humans to think about how we're using technology and just let the technology do the thinking for us, then it will widen that gap and it will exacerbate those issues like white supremacy or just racism in general. And if you watch that movie, Will Smith as a black cop interacting with with a robot that he's prejudiced against is an absolute metaphor for what you're asking about. And he's prejudiced against the technology because of preconceived notions of what he thinks it is. And so the question is, if we as humans lean more and more on letting the technology not only do the work but make the decisions for us, then it will exacerbate those issues.
So talking to educators as a student, what do you guys think the difference is ethically about straight up cheating and using ChatGPT or any other AI systems? Just because, say I was in a class, one of your guys' class, and I just copied my friend's paper and wrote that down, and I get caught, that's obviously unethical. But if I use ChatGPT and I copy it and I don't get caught, I'm still cheating. It's just I'm not caught. So what do you guys think the difference is?
You just don't get caught, right? I mean, it's,
Here's one way to respond. There's the Socratic way that goes back to Socrates, right?
You philosopher, you.
Yeah, well, this is an ethics event. There's the idea of, right, what is being harmed? And Socrates would say that your soul is being harmed, right? And this goes back to my question to you about how we should adapt, right? And how we can be most effective as educators as opposed to surveillance officers for AI, right? Because it goes back to the quality of education we're able to give you and how much time we spend doing this or that and how much we ignore the possibility that somebody can cheat in the interest of genuine education, right? Versus the need and the demand for us to try to keep the situation equitable, right? And to keep students as honest as possible. So there are a whole host of issues related to that question, and I appreciate it very much.
kind of going like backing off that. So you're talking about how Mr. North, someone like you used the Chat GPT, it got an 85. How is it ethical that students, that Chat GPT is providing more opportunities for students to kind of shrug by college by basically cheating, you know, because 20 years ago I wasn't in college, but I'm assuming it was either you fail the class or you work hard and learn it, but I feel like Chat GPT, it's providing more opportunity for, and it's robbing people of critical thinking and learning. So,
Well, this isn't a new problem, actually. I used to teach somewhere else before here, so this is no guilt by association. I was at a dinner with a member of the board of trustees who was a graduate of that college, who started bragging about the filing cabinets in the fraternity house that had the answers to all the tests in basically all the gen ed classes. So, student going to cheat, right? Cheater going to cheat, I guess is how you should say it, right? So, the advent of generative AI as a tool to help students have to do less work because they don't want to is not a new problem in higher education. It's kind of like the problem of pornography in my youth as opposed to pornography in your youth, right? I had to find somebody who'd thrown a magazine out because I couldn't go buy it myself, or I had to find it somewhere, whereas you could sit down at a family computer and consume that, right? And so the delivery mechanism has changed, but the problem has not. It has existed, I mean, since the beginning of humankind, these kinds of problems have existed. It's just the delivery vehicle has changed. There are some things about AI that are genuinely unique, that aren't just about it being a delivery mechanism. But in the context of the discussion of cheating, yeah, it's just a new delivery mechanism for an old thing that's been happening all along. And to some extent, as educators, we hate that because we love learning. That's why our doctorates are called doctors of philosophy. Philosophy stemming from the word love of learning, right? So we're here. Why am I not still a software engineer? Because I love learning. I love teaching. But I have to have students who want to embrace and consume that learning, because if they don't, they will find ways to pass the class without learning. And there will always be such students. That again returns to my whole point about intentionality. What do you want to get out of your college education? Is it that you've got lots of grades generated by AI? You could probably get a degree. I'm sure there are lots of people who will do that. And I think that's unfortunate, because I would want my students to choose that they would learn and understand and know, because you guys are going to be the ones who are going to be consuming a lot of the systems that these AI products are built right into, including the chip in your iPhone that's just there not doing anything quite yet, right? Consuming and deploying them in service to humanity or to the detriment of humanity.
I want to say one more thing about that, because I think a lot of us educators, we have to do a lot of more critical thinking about this, because one thing we don't talk about enough is that on the one hand, we don't want students to cheat, right, to plagiarize. And now with AI, the industry, these tech companies have also created AI detection software that universities are buying. And that's, for example, embedded in Canvas here at UVU. And so you will have professors who use that kind of software to kind of catch you, right, to see if you used AI. And I find that to be deeply problematic and unethical, where on the one hand, we don't want you to use AI, we want you to learn, but we use the very same kind of technology to catch you, the same fallible technology, by the way, because some there's some false positives that that the software can give you. And to me, that is one of the worst pedagogical situations. You can, as a professor or as an educator, you can create for your students where you accuse someone falsely of having used AI, but they didn't. I mean, the breach of trust in that moment, it's got to be one of the worst things, the worst kinds of relationships between professor and student. And so I think that's something that I would like to talk a lot more about with our students in more public venues as well, like the ethics and also the background of some of these companies. Like we use CopyLeaks here, and if you look at their terms of service page, for example, you will see that they assume copyright of your papers when they are entered into CopyLeaks. So every single time a professor enables that CopyLeaks functionality in Canvas, they are thus giving CopyLeaks copyright of your papers, of your intellectual labor. And then a company like CopyLeaks will use your paper to further train its large language model. You know, so those kinds of things I feel we don't talk about. We talk about plagiarism, and you said some wonderful things that needs to be contextualized too, but then we also are using additional AI tools that I think have some ethical problems that I don't see us talking about ever. Us meaning professors, and you guys have no idea that actually using these programs compromises your intellectual labor, your papers that you're writing. To me, that's a huge, huge, huge issue.
So let's direct a question toward David, right, who's chairing the AI task force and looking at things from the standpoint of academic administration. What are the key questions there? It seems what Krista raised is relevant, and there are many others. Can you identify a few?
Well, yeah, I mean, the key questions, I mean, Krista raised, I think, a really important question. On the other hand, we have some faculty, and again, I think this is why the conversation is important, who are demanding that kind of software and that kind of access because, you know, and I'll be careful how I say this, but sometimes it's for the very thing that Matt has talked about, that, well, I don't want to change I don't want to change what I'm doing, so I need AI to stop AI. You know, and I mean, it just builds on itself, if that makes sense. So I mean, I think there is a lot of reflection that's needed there. But at some level, I think that has to be ground up, if that makes sense. You know, faculty really, really enjoy it, if you've ever known faculty, when the administration comes in and tells them what to do. That's one of the solid positives that occurs on a campus. Thanks, at least one of you agree with me. And so, you know, so I think it is though, and I think the administration can be the one to lead out to start those conversations, but it really does have to be generated out of the faculty. And then frankly, I think we have to recognize there are differences in the disciplines. There will be some disciplines that use and embrace AI in different ways than other disciplines. I think there are some universal questions that the institution needs to take on. The institution probably needs some type of a statement and a little bit of, I'm going to use a very reluctant word here, a little bit of policy towards these kinds of things, just to guide some conversations. But at the end of the day, this is about the learning environment, and that is controlled by the faculty in their individual classrooms, in their individual programs. And you know, at some level, I think it also goes to the heart of Brian's question to all of you earlier, which is, well, what do you expect from us? You know, the quickest way to change a campus in some ways, and this is a little bit off the topic, but it's all of you pushing back on us. When you start to push back on us, we respond pretty quickly. We can go round and round in circles amongst ourselves, but when we feel your pressure, we do. Sorry.
What do you think about your professors using AI to give you feedback on your papers, which is starting to happen?
Well, I mean, you've been asking like what we would want to see out of teachers.
Yeah.
And I find the use of AI on campus really disturbing. I think it's such a betrayal of what education should be about, and a waste of people's money on campus if you're not even going to try to learn something yourself. And so, I don't know, if the faculty has decided to universalize the acceptance of AI in their classes, I think it should be absolutely required to start teaching students what that means and the ethical implications of it. I don't think that can be something that is allowed on campus without teaching students what that means for their education. The ethical, you know, like, what does it mean to be human if you're letting a machine do all the human parts for you? And the environmental concerns, like, why are we letting something that is known to have such severe environmental concerns be such a thing on campus? And so I would just say, if you're looking for what I would value on campus, it would be a stronger requirement to teach students what I don't know, like what that, what that implies, what their use of AI means for them as students and people going into the workforce and into the world as citizens of a society.
There's a scene in an 80s movie, and I think it's Weird Science, and
I can tell you if it is or not.
There's a scene of a classroom, a lecture style classroom, where the professor walks in, and in place of students, there are like 100 tape recorders.
Yep.
Right, and then in addition to that, right, in the 21st century, you could say that, right, there's a computer sitting at the front of the room, right, using AI to speak into recording devices where there's no human interaction, right, whatsoever, right? It's a kind of absurd way of thinking about it in a way, but it does raise the question, and this connects to some of the things Matt was raising, right, about, you know, what is real, what is human about this, what is artificial about it, and what decisions are we gonna make collectively in determining what that boundary is and how it serves humanity. And one of the reasons why I was excited to have someone from our English department and someone from our computer science department ties back to what David was saying is part of these questions depend on your discipline. Things are gonna be very different, right? In the humanities, where Krista and I teach, as opposed to computer science and other areas of campus. So yeah, it's gonna look different depending on where you are on campus.
Responding to what you want from students, I think kind of going along with seeing that AI is a presence on campus, I think just transparency on what professors are using, what we have access to, and I think if professors knew use cases that are good and bad for us in their various disciplines, like I'm studying botany. I have to take a statistics course where I have to do R, and it's really intimidating to have to learn how to do some very light coding, but my professors had pointed out that, you know, ChatGPT can be a really great help if you're not quite sure where things go. And that has been an invaluable tool for me, kind of bridging the knowledge gap between physical sciences and having to learn how to communicate with this technology. And I think it comes down to knowing the use cases that are going to help or hinder students, where, like, I know I wouldn't use it when writing a paper, but like you said, I could use it to proofread or to say, hey, these two sentences, I can't think of a way to make them sound, you know, different. I can't think of a way to start them with a different word. And I think just, you know, we're adults, our professors are adults. I think just transparency in what's being used and offering us use cases that could be beneficial for us, while potentially also giving us warnings of what might not be the best use for it.
Right.
Are administrators adults? Clearly not. Yeah, last question, we're closing in on time.
I was going to respond to like your question about what like we're looking for in an academic setting versus AI, and I think when it comes down to like, sometimes it feels like we're trying just to prevent the use of AI, and just like what can we do to prevent, how are we going to stop this, it's putting clauses in the syllabus, things like that. And then I think it's like, well, why not embrace it and teach how to properly use it, but as well as change our classes so that way we don't necessarily need to rely on it. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, and for example, I'm in the autism minor, and so one of my classes we're having to learn different types of teaching, and there's just no way that I can't practice that type of teaching on AI, if that makes sense. I have to have that human connection with that student next to me practicing that type of teaching. And then I also noticed that in some of my other classes of, you know, like I'm interviewing them for a nutrition class or things like that, and almost bringing in that, taking away like the lecture aspect. Obviously within college there's gonna be lectures, I think bringing in like that human aspect within classes and changing the way we teach our content that allows our human interaction between students, it takes out that need for AI, because AI can't create that human thing, I think, if that makes sense. So it's changing the way we teach and interact within our classes as well as teaching how to properly use AI, I think is what I look for.
Just really quick, I love what you're saying. I think it goes to the heart though of, and it's been said up here a couple of times, the faculty are trying to get their head around this too. I mean, this is new to them and maybe even harder for them. At my age, I adapt very quickly, but some people don't. But honestly, one of the things we're trying to do right now, and I'm about to use a term, we're trying to get faculty to, and trying to get the money in place to give faculty the opportunity to do what we would call externships. Think of it as an internship for the faculty. We need the faculty to be able to go out into these very industries that we maybe haven't been in, or the places we haven't been for decades or for a very long time, and see what's going on out there. And how places are using this, or how they're not using it, and the concerns they have. So it is part of that connection and finding the space to do that. Because as I said, I work in public management. I work with city managers. I can honestly tell you, I don't know how city managers are using this right now. Are they using it? I guarantee they are. So, it's on me to get out there and figure that out. But the institution's going to have to support us too, because we are. The faculty are fairly busy. Let's just put it that way.
Well, returning back to Matt's hope, we sincerely hope that this was worthwhile for you, and that you will walk away with more questions and ideas and ways to make this applicable to you. And to David's point, we're very interested in you being an active participant in your own education, in maintaining transparent, candid correspondence with your faculty, responding to requests from the administration, because all of us are in this together, as they say, and we hope the outcome is beneficial for you. So,
Brian, can I say one
please,
quick thing on that?
yeah.
We've asked you to engage with us and kind of hold us accountable and give us feedback. You have an advocate. His name's Ian Gotcher. He's the VP of Academics for UVU SA, and I would encourage you to use him as a tool if you want to give feedback to faculty and administrators on this or any other issue related to academics. Ian Gotcher is your advocate.
Thank you for your time. Please join me in thanking our panelists. Have a great rest of your day.